Hey, Leo, I have a question for you.
What?
What do you think happens when we die?
I don't know.
What's your guess?
Can you have a guess? I don't know.
Well, everyone gets to have a guess because nobody knows for sure, right?
Do you like? That's like. But how can you know if someone wants to get roasted or like in stone?
Roasted?
Like cooked in smoke, like Papa's uncle, or like that.
Oh, you mean like after when their body is died and then what? Like when the body gets burned, right?
Yeah.
They call it cremated.
No, but how do people know that if they want to be in stone or go in a box?
Well, hopefully they would talk to them before they die.
So like when they're like almost 400, like they're 300 and then they go to 400 and like die?
So like before they're really old, yeah. So like I think Papa knows that I actually haven't really decided yet. I might want to be cremated or I might want to be buried in a natural way. But before the person dies. Hopefully they either told someone or they wrote it down somewhere.
They have to write it down on their on their hands, so when they
Then they could just read their hand and be like, oh, this guy wants to go in a box.
like write it on their skin.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm gonna grab a paper and then a type of thing that sticks to the paper, and then they look on the side. Oh, he wants to go in boxes, like anything like that.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah. What is? Now what's your guess?
What's my guess? I think, well, my guess is the same as your guess, basically.
No, you have to have a different guess.
Oh, I do? Well, I think, our hearts stop beating, so we die. And then I think that's it. Oh, okay. Hey, I love you. Coming. I'm coming. That was one of the most adorable things I've ever heard. Oh, I love his little voice and his answers, responses, maybe we'll call them. We don't have answers. Why would your very young child? I love that he asked you in response. And there's just something so poetic about the little childhood sound in the background and this really seemingly heavy human conversation in the foreground, and then the moment where you just go, and I think that's it. And and then seconds later you're like summoned out of the room by your other small child, and that was the real gift to listen to. Joan, thank you for that. And also, wow, what a beautiful piece of art, honestly, to just offer as the first voice memo of our voice memo conversations for our second season. Man, you set the bar real high, Joan. I don't know what do I say now? I will say that I am walking home after the most profound to date bodywork session that I've ever had the incredible honor of facilitating. I have a new friend here in Bellingham, and man, she's, I guess maybe just consciousness partnered with living matter. Like, she's really aware of the transmutation that is not just possible, but I believe kind of the purpose of being in a body. To learn how to feel the data that our living matter is trying to give us about what they know, what they've been through, what they've inherited, etc. And feel it, know how to interpret it, and then how to employ certain principles, techniques, practices. When we first met, we did a trade, and she asked if we could do another trade this week. And so she worked in me yesterday, and it was really really supportive and helpful for my processes with my body. And I got to work on her tonight, and that's what I'm walking home from right now. And there's a lot that I could say about it. But what matters to this conversation, I didn't really realize until towards the end of the experience that there's all kinds of ways that individual people can understand and explain to ourselves and each other like what's going on and like the technology of the body. And like I think that there's a pretty succinct way of explaining like most of what all of those things are, and it's just like grief. How to navigate, it's learning how to navigate the human experience in a body when almost all there is just like you are either mounting, riding, or dismounting a wave of grief in some capacity, or you're in a moment where you're getting ready to like mount the next one. And so learning like what to do and how to do what to do in the body with that emotion is really important. Yeah, there's so many ways to move that emotion through the body. And I happen to have the real honor of being someone who gets to facilitate what I think is one of the most potent, powerful, important ways of moving grief through the body, which is touch. And in this specific experience tonight, what I can and will say as I wrap this up about the body that I got to hold tonight and hold space for, is that body lost her father just a few months ago. And that body that I held space for and held and tended to tonight is the body of a person who is experiencing what I was just referencing, that I was starting to become aware of, will be mine to experience at some point. I don't know how soon, but I was processing that with you in our conversation the other day about my mom, and I don't know. It's hard to put into language just like what's in the room with me when I know that I'm supporting a vessel container of living matter that one of the bodies that built this body is no longer, is either in a box or is a tree now, or the has been cremated. Like it's so affecting to the living matter. One of the things my friend expressed that I had been thinking about a lot lately is like just how desperate like the human animal is for like ritual and ceremony around this. Not a fucking funeral, like wailing with one another, like this body did on my table tonight. It's a profound honor, and what I hope for us as people, as consciousness partnered with our living matter, what I hope for us is that we figure out a way to, in modernity, like return back to the rituals and ceremony and space that is necessary, like absolutely vital for the flourishing of our bodies around death. Ritual and ceremony around death. Because I just got to bear witness tonight to what a body wants to do in the presence of death. And it was an honor to hold that space. So that's it. I'm going to go inside and eat some chili with my family and try and, continue to feel my way through everything that just was for, 2 hours. So it's a real gift, and I'm glad to share it with you. I love you, Joan. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Hey, Jamie. I'm driving to go pick up my kids. They just had a sleepover at their grandma and grandpa's house, which are my parents, so that Francis and I could celebrate our 12th wedding anniversary with like a night at home by ourselves. And yeah, it's so cute. I'm like obsessed with both of my children, but like Leo, who the main character you heard in that was Leo, who's 4, and the way he speaks and his little kid accent is so delicious, and all of his little affectations, and like he still says, instead of saying minutes, he says mittens. So be like, has it been 10 mittens yet or whatever? And like, I'm not going to correct him. Are you kidding me? Like sometimes he says minutes now and I'm like so sad. Speaking of a tiny grief, a tiny death, like his little baby accent, as he grows into a more skilled English language speaker, something dies at the same time. And that's like kind of how it always goes. And so it's like the bittersweet of life is the best flavor of life because it's acknowledging everything involved. Because there's nothing that's like purely good and joyous that doesn't contain flavors of loss or grief or leaving something behind. It's just not how it goes. It's so fascinating. I just had a sense that he would have an interesting answer to that question because he talks about death not infrequently. So like obviously this conversation, I like hit record and like prompted the question, but most of the time like he prompts the question and it often comes up just like very randomly. Like we'll be talking about whatever, and it'll be like, is that thing going to happen forever and ever until we die? Or like he'll be like, I love you forever and ever until you and me both die. Or even after I say I'll love you even after I die because like my love will live inside of you. But you know, like just like until I die is a very common like refrain for him. And my understanding is that's very common developmentally. It's like around this age is when kids are starting to get like kind of fascinated with death and have heard about death in some way. Like he mentions in it, like my husband's uncle, so like one of his dad's brothers passed away last year, and they live in a different province, so we didn't go to the funeral, but there was like a live stream of the funeral. And so my husband like showed them some parts of it just so they had an understanding of what happened and why he was feeling sad. And they were so fascinated, had so many questions about it. And that's when we told them all about the options of like, you know, cremation or whatever. Because our general philosophy with them is to share, not like overshare in the sense of like gory, shocking details that we don't sense they would have the context and life lived and even just like developmental stage to understand, but like at a level that we feel like they'd understand, we try and explain whatever to them, like and just try and be honest and not like shy away from those things. And so anyway, yeah, many conversations about death, especially Leo. He has so many questions about everything, and sometimes it's honestly exhausting. Like before I had kids, I was like, I'm never going to be annoyed at my kids' questions. I'm going to be like, what do you think? And I'm going to like be so open and curious and like celebrate their scientific minds. And I do. When I'm at my best, I absolutely do celebrate their minds. And sometimes it's like literally the 50th question on the same car ride, and mama's brain is tired and needs a break, you know? So then I tell him that, and he doesn't know he'll love it, but sometimes it's too many. Or sometimes it goes in circles. And then I know he's a bit anxious or something. So anyway, that's the Leo of it all. He's definitely a curious little cookie. Love him so much and all of his sweetness, and happy to share it with you and those who are listening, because, you know, everyone gets to experience the joy of a Leo mind who thinks of cremation as roasting. It makes sense to me too that like when I asked him that, because I just had no idea, I just wanted to like start a conversation with death about it basically. Then he focused on sort of what happens to the body after we die. Speaking of bodies, like that's the most sort of real concrete thing that's more knowable, is like literally what happens to our no longer living matter after it is expired, after they, you know, are done living. And all the rest of it, like I said, like my belief is that it's a guess, and everyone just has a guess about things like the afterlife, etc. And so it makes sense to me he would be in sort of more of the concrete phase, both because that's, I think, more where he's at anyway in his mind, and also because we like do not talk about the afterlife in our house because like neither my husband or I believe in it really. And so it's not like I imagine when I was 4, I would have had an answer to that question. I would have been like, we go to heaven and we're with Jesus and our loved ones, because that would have been the answer I was given. And so it is really fascinating to see my kids have a different experience of what they know as facts and truth because of what we're offering, and how just in general trying to offer less facts and truth about things that, in our opinion at least, have space for imagination and multiplicity and unknown and personal choice and faith journey. But both my boys do say they believe in God, and maybe part of that's like hanging out with my parents a bit, and also because I think some number of their friends at school would say they believe in God. Like, they definitely heard it from other people. They didn't invent the idea of God in their mind, but they both seem pretty solid about it. And I'm like, cool, So that's all very fascinating. Yeah. And then speaking to what you shared with me, first of all, I just love this notion of trading our services with one another. I think that's so beautiful, just as a way to like cut out the money middleman and just like offer each other what we can in this way. I just think that's really beautiful. And yeah, like being a space holder for people to really allow their grief to like bloom and blossom in their body and just like be fully expressed. I don't want to say released, like perhaps some of it's released, but just expressed. Like, instead of thinking we have to like hold it in such very small, limited spaces, as if grief isn't just literally part of the fabric of our lives, as if our bodies don't know how to grieve. Like, grief is a natural, ongoing process. Grief, in the way I think of it, is our body expressing that something important to us is no longer with us, something that was nourishing us, something that was resourcing us. And the body's like, oh no, that thing is gone. Am I still okay? Are the people around me still okay? Is my environment still safe? Is it okay? And it's sort of like a drawing into ourselves. I was reading a little bit about like physiologically what happens to the body during times of grief, and just sort of preparing for future conversations we're planning to have this season. And it is really fascinating how it appears that a lot of the ways that our body shifts physiologically to express grief are sort of, at least one of the theories I was reading is like to prepare for the fact that we might be also now about to die. Like, our sort of protective pathways that would allow us to like clot faster, get higher. And that can lead, unfortunately, to then like we're at like higher risk of like spontaneous blood clots, right? But like not in a way to be scared about, but like just that is true, that the coagulation pathways are like more primed to clot, because it's sort of like if someone that we love suddenly died, it might be because they were attacked and we might be the next to be hurt, right? So, and yet other parts of the body, like the immunity against viral illness, is suppressed. And so perhaps it's from a time where like viral illness was less of the threat. Who knows? This is like me very briefly reading things and then like making my own little theories. So this is like anyway, we have we loosely hold ideas of like fact anyway on this podcast. We're all like, describing what we see. The thing that I love thinking about the process of grief is that it is a deep, deep expression of our body's love for us. And it's a deep, protective loving expression, and a drawing back in that, like, a lot of when I feel sad or I'm feeling a sense of grief, it's like heavy and people feel it as like a weight. And that makes sense. And for me, when I sort of get close to and like really look in detail and feel in detail what that heaviness really means to me and what I think my body might be offering to me by creating the sensation of heaviness, it's like to ground me, to settle me back into myself instead of like flying up in the clouds. It's like, you are here and we're shoring up our resources now. How are we? Are we okay? It's a time to look into the interior and look at oneself more closely to tend to oneself versus like another emotion that might be much more like expansive and outward focused. It's like an inward focused emotion, and how beautiful that is if we take that invitation. And how then it connects us to others who are experiencing the same thing, where we're really physically feel like we want to lean on other people because we feel the heaviness and we want to lean on them and they lean on us. Like, I just think it's so beautiful. And in modernity, we are so stripped of really rich, deep traditions of grieving that our ancestors absolutely developed with such wisdom that would sort of mimic and echo and support what our bodies already offer as a grief ritual from within us, and how that's why they're so often about community and food and support. Like, it makes sense, right? And how beautiful it would be to like intentionally return to some of those. So it's an interesting piece, and even like, what do grief rituals look like for things that aren't necessarily about a person dying, but just like the everyday grief of life continuing to evolve, right? For me, at least, one is like things like this, creating art, you could say, our podcast, and avenues of connection, and just like having space to hold that grief and to honor that grief, and just to really have yet another invitation away from busyness and hustle and overwork and overproduce and cramming the life full. Like, grief is a slower pace and invites us into a slower pace. And like, what if we just stayed there? That's what I'm thinking. It probably helps that like, I'm coming to the end of like 24 hours of being like kid free with the human I love the most in the world, my husband, who did have a kind of brush with death a couple years ago with his cancer diagnosis and all the treatment. And he never truly physically came super close to death. But of course, there was the possibility that depending on how the treatment went, right, it just became more real. And I think we were already pretty good at like enjoying our time together. That's been something that Francis and I have always like, that's like one of the things we have in common, is like wanting to do things that are actually enjoyable to us rather than things that like society says are supposed to be enjoyable. And thankfully we both actually enjoy similar things, which is often like staying home, watching Netflix or a movie and like enjoying it and like cuddling together, enjoying yummy food, enjoying nature, versus other things that we could also, it's fine to enjoy, but that neither of us honestly deep down do enjoy. And I would say since his diagnosis, we've just got even, I certainly have gotten even better at like being still, allowing just a spacious amount of time to simply enjoy each other and not let other things creep in. And I feel like if I sound more rested, or like, I just feel like we really did that so well this last time, and it was really special, nourishing time together. And now we get to pick up our two little bunnies and then have them to enjoy as well, which is a slightly different pace, to be honest, less slow, because they vibrate on a much higher frequency. And I love you too, Jamie. I love doing this podcast with you. I'm so excited to be starting the second season, and it already feels super special. So thank you.
Hello, Joan. I am coming to you once again from the makeshift asphalt track behind the tiny country Baptist church in this lovely rural suburb of Nashville, where I come, at least in this season of life, once a month for both my yoga teacher training and for my bodywork residencies. And this track has been such a gift, and it was a surprise to find it, first of all. And it's been such a gift, just having this place to come to move my body, especially on a day like this where it's just, it is, spring has sprung in Tennessee. which is excellent because spring has not quite sprung yet up in Washington, at least where I am, very northern Washington. I just re-listened to your voice memo again while walking this track because I knew instantly that I wanted to send you a response once I got to this track, because when I left my teacher's house to walk along the rural highway, 2-lane highway, for just a little bit before turning on another 2-lane road for just a little bit before getting to this church and to this track, the very first thing that happened, I started walking and I looked at the road ahead of me, and it's a bit of a kind of top of a hill kind of, so I have to be a little bit vigilant about what could be coming as I'm crossing the street, kind of on my right. And I had this sensation like something's coming, but not like a car's about to barrel through. And so it wasn't like the danger sensation. It was just like, pay attention. And that was really interesting. And so once I got to, out of the road to the grass, the other side that I needed to be on, what I saw come up over the hill was a hearse. And I instantly knew in my bones that this hearse was going to this church that I'm now walking laps in a sports bra behind. And I feel like I knew that on some level, that it was kind of an informed suspicion to some degree, because my yoga teacher training weekend last month, my first day of training, that Friday on my lunch break, just like now, I walked to this track to walk the track, just like now, and there was a funeral happening at this church. And now, as I've been loosely watching the goings on at the church, more cars are starting to arrive. So it looks like another one. And I don't know what it means. I don't think it has to mean anything. I just think it's very interesting that both of the, first Fridays of my February and March residencies, there's a funeral going on at this church. And so as I've been walking, I've just been like, a body who used to contain animate consciousness and life force within that body is in that building right there. And so the still living people who will be steadily arriving and are steadily arriving already to this church are the people who are feeling in their bodies the sensations and experiences, at least, well, I guess I can't assume, but probably feeling to some degree the sensations and emotions that you were just describing in this voice memo that I was planning on walking over here and re-listening to and then recording a response. What does it mean, Joan? And as I was listening again to you share about the physical and physiological adaptations in the body when in states of grief in response to death, I was reminded of reading, again, wildly interesting, but last year I felt really prompted to check out Joan Didion's book, The Year of Magical Thinking, that she wrote after her husband died suddenly, but before her daughter actually ended up dying. But her daughter was in the hospital, and so just the book, it's basically a memoir of a window of a life kind of stalled out by and affected through and through by this particular kind of grief. And I think the part of the book that I found most engaging, probably unsurprisingly, is the part where she, for quite a few pages, unpacks what she learned in the somewhat immediate aftermath of her husband's very unexpected death. She started doing all this research into the physiological impact of grief, like what's happening to a person/body when they're grieving. And that was a comfort of sorts to her, just to be like, okay, this like I can't eat anything like that. It was just, she unpacks it really thoroughly. She's such a brilliant writer. But yeah, I was just so fascinated by those pages when I read them a year ago. And it was also so interesting because I checked that book out, not really knowing why. It felt like the right time to read it. And while that book was in my possession, that was when I got the news that one of my oldest friends had passed away. And I found out about a week after it happened, and it was a journey with my own grief with that for many reasons. It was very complicated and really heavy. And something about these convergences regarding death that I feel like I'm just sitting up and paying attention a bit more. So those are all my little anecdotal death thoughts for you today as I'm on my silly little walk. And I'll wrap this up now because this has been plenty. But I'm really excited to talk to you again so soon for our next episode and to have our first experience of talking with a guest in this format. And I'm really stoked that it's Caroline. I can't wait for the two of you to meet, and I can't wait for all of our listeners to meet her. So I hope you're having such a beautiful day, Joan. Bye.
This is Experiential Anatomy. Thanks for listening. I'm Joan Chan.
And I'm Jamie Lee Finch. Experiential Anatomy is co-hosted and created by us.
Amber Wyndham is the editor. Julia Wyndham is the supervising producer.
Senior producer is Elizabeth Wyndham. Aaron Beatty leads our community management.
Our theme music is Park Pier 3 by G's Guy.
If you have any thoughts, questions, or stories to share about this week's episode, email us at exanatomy@gmail.com.
Please follow, rate, and review on your favorite podcast platform. And remember to join us over at exanatomy.substack.com.
Experiential Anatomy is produced by Windhaven Productions.